Hi, junk journaling friends. This is Lauren with Shabby Chic Sunday. I have saved your seat at my craft table, and today we are making these shabby chic fabric carrots in a wheelbarrow. This is the first bundle that I made, and I'll be recreating them with you from scratch using different fabrics. You can use any fabric you would like for this project, including printing digital designs onto fabric, which is what I have done for these, using Market Day by Shabby Art Boutique. We're going to make three. We'll tie them in a bow, and then we're also going to decorate the outside of this wheelbarrow together. So let's get started. These are all the materials that we need for our project today. We'll be using these templates to trace our carrot designs, and we have small, medium, and large carrot tops, as well as these that look like pizza slices, the small, medium, and large, and these will become our carrots. The dotted line indicates where we're going to be sewing or gluing, and either option is fine. And we're also going to want to grab something to tie our bundle together. I'm using this embroidered cotton trim. You could use ribbon or even twine. And we'll want a pencil or a marker for tracing, a dowel rod, or even a hot glue stick, and this will help to shove our cotton to the very tip of our carrot. We'll want some embroidery floss and a needle. And I'm using this big bag of polyfill fiberfill. The whole bag was only $5 from Michael's, and all it is separated cotton. So it was actually more economical than going to my Dollar Tree and buying a bag of cotton balls, a pair of scissors, and also fabric. These are the three main pieces that I am using as the body of my carrots. I have a smaller scrap piece off to the side that I'll use for the carrot tops. And what I've done is I've chosen 3 prints from the Market Days collection and then printed them off on white cotton fabric. So don't forget that you are not limited to just buying fabric from the store. You can also print your own fabric using digital kits. So let's pull out our templates and we'll match up the small carrot top with the small carrot slice, and obviously the medium top with the medium slice, and the large top with the large carrot slice. So we'll be using each one of these on one piece of our printed fabric, and I think we'll start with let's start with this one for the large, because this one's my favorite one. So what I'm going to do here is I want to flip my fabric upside down so that I can do all of my marking on the side that we're not going to see. So I'm going to take my template here and a pencil. You could obviously use a piece of chalk or even a marker, but I'm going to go ahead and suffice just with this little pencil. Normally I would take my template and line it up all the way to the edge so that I only had to trace the top and then one side of my carrot. But when this one printed out, it got a little funky on the left side there, and so I want to make sure I cut that piece off my carrot as well. So I'll be tracing and then cutting out all 3 sides. So let's move our template to the side. I'm going to grab my pair of fabric scissors and then cut this out. Now I did want to save as much room as possible, so if I wanted to, I could come back and then use one of the carrot top templates on that additional piece of fabric right there. When you're cutting this out, don't worry about cutting in perfect lines. For one, Shabby Chic gracefully allows flaws, and for 2, these lines will be covered by being sewn or glued together anyway. After we have our template cut out, we're going to take our carrot, or pizza slice, because that's what it looks like to me, and we want to fold it in half. And we want it to be inside out, and then right along this seam here is where we're going to hand stitch or sew or even glue. I'm going to be using my sewing machine, so I'm just going to take these little needles and put 2 right here just so I can hold it together and make sure everything stays in place the way I want it. And I'm just going to sew right along the right side of my carrot. You're going to leave the top part open, obviously, because that's where you're going to put the cotton filling, and then we're going to hand stitch that closed when we're finished. So right along the right side, and make sure that you're going all the way to the bottom, right at that very tip, because if not, some of your cotton filling is going to poke right out. So now we can see our seam here. We have sewn right along the edge all the way down. And it's a pretty messy sew job, but that's okay because we're going to flip it inside out now and your seam will be hidden. So I'll start off using my fingers first just to poke through as much as I can. And this is where the dowel rod really comes into handy because that long stick can really help to get right at the tip. If you have something even with more of a head, like a pencil or even a poking needle, that might work. just to really try to get that tip to poke out as much as you can at the very end. So now that it is no longer inside out, we can see that our seam here is neatly tucked inside and we are ready to fill. So I just grabbed a handful of our cotton filling, and again, you can use cotton balls if you have and just pull them apart. That will work just the exact same. And you're going to want to take tiny handfuls at a time. I made the mistake the first time of just grabbing one big handful and shoving it in, and honestly it made a huge difference doing it little bit by little bit first, because you want to take your either long hot glue stick like I'm using, or the dowel rod or a pencil, and really push each little clump down. So for this point of your project, you're just going to take little handful by little handful at a time and use your stick or your tool, whatever you've decided, and just keep poking it down. So fill with a little bit, poke it down. Fill with a little bit, poke it down. And it's totally personal preference how full or bulky you want your carrot to be, but you do want to leave just a little bit of space at the top because we're going to fold down the top of our fabric and we're going to stitch along that seam. So we don't want it to be overfilling. So you can see how I've left just a couple centimeters open there, which will allow me to fold the material down easily. This is one of the toppers that I had already made, and I just want to show you how I used my sewing machine here to stitch it around, and I like that it looks a little shabby, a little messy. I think that is what makes the character of the carrot. So I'm going to go ahead and use this topper that I had already pre-made to show you how we're going to stitch the top of the carrot onto the base. We're going to grab some of this embroidery floss here, and I'm going to use white. I have a needle, and I've already put the thread through the needle. I'm going to fold down the top fabric of our carrot, and then when I put the needle inside, I want to make sure I start from the inside so that we don't see the knotted part on the outside of the carrot. That will be hidden. So I'll pull that floss all the way through. And I'm not using the entire thick strand of the embroidery floss. I'm only using 2 pieces of that floss, and I'll show you that on the next carrot when I start this process again. So right now I'm just going to keep on doing a simple stitch in and out, and then when I pull it, you can see that it's starting to scrunch together. And that is what we want it to do, to pull that top of the carrot together. We're going to make 2 more carrots after this, and I'll show you how to do the topper, obviously, for the next 2. I just had this one sitting to the side, so I thought it'd be easy to show you how we're going to assemble the first one a little more quickly. Once we've gone all the way around the top of our carrot, this is what it should look like. I'm going to pull it open just a little bit, push my stuffing down, and we're going to attach the top of the carrot to our base. You're going to want to add some glue to the base of your carrot top before you stick it inside of your carrot, and then we're going to sew this closed. So I'm just going to stuff mine inside. I'm going to end up sewing my carrot top to my base, so that's why I'm skipping the glue. I'm going to grab my string and then go ahead and cinch that closed. So my base is now wrapping around my carrot top, and then when I go to finish it off and tie my double knots to end off the string, I'm going to tie those knots to the base of my carrot top, and that's going to hold it in place. So you can see that's what I'm doing here. I'm sticking my needle through the top of my carrot base, and it's also poking through then the base of my carrot top, if you can follow along with what I'm saying, and that's where I'm tying off my knots. Cutting off that excess string, and there's our first carrot. That is so cute. I absolutely love that. Okay, let's go ahead and make our second one now. So I'm going to grab my second piece of fabric and my next template, which is going to be the medium carrot top and the medium carrot base. I'm going to flip my fabric over because we want to trace on the side that will not be seen. This time I'll line my template up all the way to the left, and then I'm only going to trace the top and the sides. I'm going to leave room here again so I can use that for a carrot top on a different carrot. Go ahead and cut that right out. Okay, so I'm going to take it and I'm going to fold it over again, and we want it to be inside out. You could use fabritac glue if you don't want to hand stitch or sew, and you would just glue right along the edge. If you're using glue, let it dry for at least 30 minutes before you flip it inside out to make sure it's actually completely adhered. And another option, if you don't want to sew or glue, you can grab your embroidery floss or thread and your needle, and you can hand stitch along the side of your carrot. So you have 3 options of how you can attach your carrots together. Add my pins, and then I'm going to put it through my sewing machine. Let's go ahead and take out our pins, and then we're going to turn our fabric right side out. Oh, there's a little thread here. Let's go ahead and cut that off. Okay, so I'll grab the tip, and I'm going to just roll that over, push down with my fingers as far as I can get it, and then I'll use my dowel rod to get at the very, very bottom. Sometimes you can use your fingers to kind of pull apart at the tip, or again, use that pencil so you can have a sharp poker at the edge. We're going to grab our cotton and stuff it inside. And again, for this part of the process, don't forget that you want to take little clumps at a time, poke them down, little clumps, poke them down, rather than all one big giant heap of cotton at once. That's going to prevent it from being lumpy. You'll know that it's done when you can see just a couple centimeters at the top. We're going to set this to the side and work on the topper now. So I'm going to grab my medium carrot topper, and I've got a couple different pieces of fabric here that are scraps, and I'm just going to try and match which one I think looks the best for my carrot base. I'm going to take this piece of scrap here that we're going to use for the base, and we want 2 of them, okay, front and back, obviously. So I'm going to take this one piece of fabric, I'm going to fold it in half, that way I only have to trace 1 time. So I'll fold this, I'll take my template, we'll put it here, and I'm going to use my pencil then and trace my carrot top. And when I cut it out then, I'll be cutting out 2 pieces of fabric at once, and it's just going to save us a little bit of time. I'm going to add one of my pins just to keep everything in place while I'm cutting it out. And again, don't worry about making this perfect. I had actually kind of a bit of difficulty using these big scissors to cut out this thin fabric, but at the end of the day, it does not matter because a shabby chic carrot is going to have some flaws. We'll take out our pin, and then we want to fold them the right way. We had folded the fabric inside out because we wanted them to be mirrors of each other, and now we want to make them the right way. So I'm going to then put my pin back inside so that I can keep it together when I put it back through the sewing machine. Or you could hand stitch, or you could glue. Again, don't forget you have 3 options for how you want to attach all of your pieces together. I think we'll show the hand stitch method for this one. So I'm going to grab my white embroidery floss, and we'll pull a little piece out. Now, if you haven't used embroidery floss before, let me show you that there are actually 6 individual strands in this one piece. So what you can do is you can just take your finger and kind of lightly tap the top of your strands, and that's going to start to separate them, and you'll be able to see that there are 6 individual thin little pieces in that one cohesive strand. And so you can choose then the thickness that you would like your stitching to be. I'm going to pull out 2 of the strands and cut them off, and then I'll put that piece into my needle. Using variations of thickness just adds different dimensions and aesthetic to your projects, and it also saves on materials. You can get a lot more out of your embroidery floss by separating the strands. I've threaded my floss through the eye of the needle, and I've knotted the end. Now I'm going to begin slow stitching. You get to determine the length of your stitches. Mine ends up being a whole variety of different lengths, and that's okay as long as they're close enough together so that your cotton fluff doesn't come out the sides. So I think what's really cool about this project is that there's a multitude of ways to do it, and you're going to get to the same end result, even if it looks a little bit different each time. So you can slow stitch like I'm doing here, you can put this through the sewing machine, and you can also use the fabritac glue. So it might be nice to try out the different ways and see which one you like the best. I also wanted to mention for your stuffing, if you don't have cotton balls or fiber fill, you can use scraps of bunched up fabric, toilet paper, or even paper towel. It's a nice project to do for spring that really doesn't require a lot of materials and supplies. Now that I'm almost done stitching this carrot topper, I'm realizing how cute this would have been if I had used pink embroidery floss on the green fabric. We'll have to do that for the next one. So now that I'm nearing the bottom of my carrot topper, I'm just going to pull on my threads just to make sure I don't have any bunching where I don't want it. And I'm going to leave the bottom part open here because we need to fill that with our cotton. So we'll take our needle out. I'm going to pull my thread to the side because my needle is still attached to that. We're going to open this up and fill it with our cotton. The topper is way easier to fill than the actual carrot base, so this will only take a couple of seconds. And then we're going to use our needle and thread that we still have attached to the side, and we're going to sew up the bottom so that our cotton is safe inside. To finish it off, I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to stick it through just the top part of my fabric. I'm going to pull until I see a little loop, stick my needle through, and pull. And I'm going to repeat that twice. So I'm going to stick it through a tiny bit of the fabric, make a little loop, put my needle through the loop, and pull. And that's how we're going to finish off our double knot. And there is our second carrot topper. So here's the back side and the front. And sometimes I even go through and I pull out the little frays of fabric off the edges because I think that adds to the shabby chic look. So we're going to attach the top now to our second carrot base, and it's going to sit right here inside. So again, we'll fold over just the top few centimeters. Again, I have pulled out 2 strands from my embroidery floss. I'm going to stick that through the eye of my needle. I'm going to double knot at the end, and then we're going to sew. If you wanted to avoid hand stitching or using the sewing machine completely, you could use glue for this part too. Grab your fabritac, and I would probably use some paper clips or even some sewing clips just to clamp it down and make sure that your glue stays in place while you are gluing around the entire perimeter. My needle has now gone all the way through, so I'm going to pull it to show you what it will look like when you cinch it closed. But I'm going to open it back up because we still need to put our carrot topper inside. Don't forget, we want to add glue to the base of our carrot topper, or when you put it inside, make sure when you are closing off and finishing your stitch that you are connecting the base of the carrot to the topper while you're stitching. I'm going to pull that closed, nice and tight. Make sure it's on there straight, and then I'm going to do my finishing stitch. So now we have 2 shabby chic carrots completed, and we're going to make one last carrot, and that will be our small size before we decorate the wagon. So now all three of our carrots are finished. We have our small, medium, and large. I think I'm going to put the small one here right on top for the bundle. And unfortunately, the original piece of fabric that I had pulled out for tying the bundle together ended up being too small, so I had to substitute it with this. But I think a piece of ribbon or lace, or even if you cut off a section of tulle or white or brown twine, would look really pretty. So we're just going to tie a little bow here, and then we're going to add our tag. For our tag, this is an element from the Rosewood collection by Shabby Art Boutique, and all I did was upload it to my Cricut design space to type the bunny bait text on top. I'm using a hole punch here, and then I'm going to thread a scrap piece of fabric from one of the carrots in order to tie this to my ribbon. This will be our final step for our carrot bundle before moving on to decoupaging our wheelbarrow. And I have to say, these would be super cute to display in a wooden crate or a flower bucket or pail or even a mini wagon. This is the wheelbarrow where I'll be displaying my fabric carrots. I've painted it white as a base, and then I've printed one of the designs that we used for a carrot onto a piece of tissue paper. If you've never printed on tissue paper before, I do have a tutorial for that, and I'll link that below. All you need is either a sponge brush or a paintbrush, and then some white glue such as Mod Podge. So I'm going to dip my sponge brush in. I seem to have better luck when I use sponge brushes over paintbrushes because I tend to buy really cheap paintbrushes that lose their actual brushes in the process of painting with them. And I don't want any of those black bristles to be tucked underneath my decoupaged paper here. What's nice about working with tissue paper and Mod Podge is that there actually is quite a bit of leniency and the process is quite forgiving. I noticed that I had some crinkles when I first laid it down, and I was easily able to pull it back up and redo it. Now this only works to an extent, obviously. At some point it is going to adhere, but you are able to do this if needed 3 to 4 times before it wants to stick permanently. And let me tell you, I did it about 3 to 4 times on this side. When you've glued it all down, you can easily peel away the excess paper from the sides, or you can use an X-Acto knife or even scissors to cut along the edges. Once it's dry, I'm going to go ahead and flip my wagon over, and I'm going to repeat the same process on the other side. So I'll dip my sponge brush into the Mod Podge, I'll put one thin clear coat on this side, and I'm going to put more tissue paper down. I had a much easier time adhering this tissue paper. I think it was just because it was the second time around, and I knew that I didn't need to spend so much time making it perfect. It seems when I'm trying to do things faster, they seem to work out better. I don't know why that is. And then as soon as I try to make everything absolutely perfect is when I struggle. Once both sides of my wheelbarrow are covered in the tissue paper, I'm going to add a thin layer of the Mod Podge to the top in order to seal it. I forgot to mention that the Mod Podge that I am using is a matte finish, so it won't have this shine to it once it's dried. But if you like that look, then you want to use Mod Podge Gloss. And here's our finished project of our 2 separate carrot bundles, and we'll place them here in the wheelbarrow for the Easter Bunny. Thank you for joining me at my craft table today, and I will see you all tomorrow for our giveaway drawing. Bye-bye.